My name is Marta, and at 34 years old, I made the decision to pivot away from my six-figure soap-making education business, wave goodbye to 6 years of hard work, and literally start from zero without exactly knowing what I wanted to do next. And by far the most important thing I've learned is how you literally cannot change your life if you don't take the time to deeply know yourself first. This is incredibly important, and I'll get back to it in just a moment. But first, pay attention. What is the number one thing all of these big creators have in common? Did you catch it? They all have a clear vision. And this is a vital step that's often not really considered until you're further along in your business journey. And I get why. It's very hard to have a crystal clear vision at the very beginning. No wonder why many of us feel stuck when we decide to take that first step. And the first thing we're told usually is that we need to find our niche. I know this too well because I spent months trying to sketch out the perfect customer avatar before I'd even created a single piece of content or shown up online. So let's drop the idea of finding your niche, because first, you can't find your niche if you don't truly know who you are. And second, it's not really about finding a niche at all. It's less about defining what you want to be known for and more about deciding who you want to be known as. It's a subtle yet very important difference. So let me share with you the first step I took to ditch my reality and create a completely new identity for myself. When I decided to quit my soap making education business and start fresh, I entered one of the most vulnerable moments of my life. It was September 2023, and as a first-time mom, I was adjusting to parenthood and my business just didn't bring me joy anymore. I felt I had completely lost myself. I wanted to focus on pivoting to marketing and communication, but I didn't know exactly what steps to take. I was stuck in this limbo for nearly 1 year. Until in May 2024, so about 6 months ago, I found something that truly transformed my life. Writing. But not just any writing, because sure, I did market research and scripted my first YouTube videos, but here's what truly made the difference: writing down my own story. So you hear about the importance of sharing your own story to build a relatable personal brand, but that's just scratching the surface. To uncover where you are now and where you want to go, you need to write down your life story. Of course, not literally every detail of it, but write down those pivotal events that shaped who you are today. And make sure to do this as if you're writing to yourself. So not as if you're explaining it to someone else, like a stranger or a hypothetical audience. Take a quiet moment to just be alone and write to yourself. And you know what will happen then? As you reflect on your past, you remember those good as well as those not so good moments. You will feel vulnerable, and that's the whole point. Because being vulnerable allows you to fully accept and embrace yourself. And only then you can show up authentically and pursue your true dreams and aspirations. And keep in mind that this is coming from someone who tried to bury her vulnerabilities her whole life. So let me share with you a couple of pivotal moments from my own story so you can get a concrete example of what I'm talking about. For me, it started at birth. I'm Italian. I grew up in Italy, but I was adopted as a newborn from Brazil. However, I didn't even visit Brazil until I was nearly 30, and my adoption story is something I literally tried to hide my entire life. And even now, I catch myself hiding it, and this is the first time I'm talking about it publicly because honestly, I decided I just need to get over it. And I've always been ashamed of being adopted. I'd hide my passport when traveling with friends, or avoid mentioning my birthplace when people ask where I was born, or whenever someone made remarks about whether I looked different or not so much like my parents, I'd always make a nervous laugh and skew the conversation to something else. And you might think, why? I obviously loved my family and never for once felt like I didn't belong. But I think I had a subconscious fear of abandonment haunting me my whole life. Simply put, I feared being different, thinking it meant I wouldn't be accepted. And these feelings didn't just remain within my personal life, they also seeped into my business life. For example, when I was running my previous business, I went vegan for a year. I believed in the the cause and wanted to try it. But to be honest, I also felt the pressure to do it because I thought it was what my audience expected of me. And when I realized that this diet wasn't for me, I didn't feel comfortable openly talking about it and just ended up avoiding the topic of talking about my food choices entirely. And so I'm just trying to say that writing your own story and identifying those pivotal moments in your life that made you who you are today is the first crucial step to really understanding who you are. And if you don't know who you are, it's going to be very hard to know where you're going. And for that, you must allow yourself to be vulnerable. And as Brené Brown says, vulnerability is having the courage to show up when you don't know the outcome. Once I scripted down my story and identified those vulnerable, pivotal moments that shaped me into who I am, I was still left pretty clueless about what exactly I could focus my new business on. I have many interests and passions, so I really struggled to identify what to focus on specifically. And for the longest time, stuck in this niche down thinking, I was convinced I had to focus on one specific narrow skill for the rest of my life, like for example, just email marketing. But in reality, it's not about identifying that one skill. How can you reduce yourself to one thing after all? It's about identifying the meeting point between three things: your talent, your passion, and your strength. Where passion is something you love, talent is something that comes natural to you, and a strength is a unique skill you've mastered. And that point of intersection between the three is called your zone of genius. Now, the concept of the zone of genius comes from the book The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And in the book, Gay talks about how we have different zones we operate in. And it's only when we operate in our zone of genius that we can reach our fullest potential. The problem is that many people stay stuck in their zone of excellence because of an upper limit problem, a self-imposed limit from childhood experiences. And this is why writing your story is a powerful way to uncover common threads and identify any upper limit problems and where they may have originated. For example, my upper limit problem has always been not feeling good enough, like we talked about when I shared my story. And so writing your story is the first step to gaining the self-awareness necessary to break the upper limit. Then, once you identify what your upper limit is, to help you uncover your zone of genius, ask yourself the following questions. 1. What comes so natural to you that you're always surprised if you see someone else struggling at the same thing? That's your talent. Number 2, what's something you would do if you could only pick one thing for the rest of your life? That's your passion. And number 3, what's a skill you've mastered over time? That's your strength. If you're struggling to give an answer to these questions, again, look at your story, because sometimes we don't really see what we write, what it's there, but the truth is always there. Sometimes it's just in between the lines. For example, my talent and my strength are teaching and creating content. And again, I discovered that by paying attention to my story. Here's another extract from my story to help you understand what I mean. So my dad used to be a creative director in an important advertising firm, and as a child, I absolutely adored analyzing, understanding, and trying to explain the communication mechanism behind a commercial. In fact, I've always known I wanted to work in marketing communication, but my dad would always tell me that the agency work was very competitive and stressful, and so I followed a completely different route. But you know what? I eventually found my way to it, and now it makes so much sense. As per my passion, being adopted at birth without any information about my genetic family left me feeling lost, as though there was literally nothing that came before me. And this created a deep desire to build a business truly aligned with who I am. And so it makes so much sense that my zone of genius lies in the intersection between personal branding, content, marketing, and teaching. And as a bonus tip to make even more sense out of all of this, I highly recommend you also take a Myers-Briggs personality test. I first took this test in 2018, but I've always felt quite skeptical about it and didn't really fully understand the results. But after scripting my story and finding my zone of genius, Myers-Briggs was just a nice confirmation that I'm on the right path. I am an INFJ, introverted, intuitive, feeling, and judging, meaning my personality is very intuitive and emotional, yet organized and structured. Once you identified your zone of genius, you need to ask yourself another important question. Is my zone of genius something that the world needs and that people would actually be paying money for? The good news is that there is a practical way to find that out, and I will share exactly how in the last step towards the end of this video. But first, let me share with you the next step I took to start seeing the first changes in my life. To change your reality, you must first change your identity. But, and this is crucial, that identity needs to be who you truly want to be and not who you think others expect you to be. I say this because it's so easy to fall for the next shiny object or even your own mind trying to sabotage you and impose the upper limit we discussed before. And so to change your identity, you must first rewire your brain. And the most effective way to rewire your brain is to manifest your new identity. Now, there are many manifestation techniques you can try, some of which I am even still learning about. So I am by no means an expert, but I'm going to share with you one technique that I did try and that really worked, which is vision boarding. So if you're not familiar, a vision board is a collage of images, words, phrases representing what you want to achieve, embody, and attract into your life. And why is this vision board so powerful? Because you can't know what you can't see and feel. It's like having a messy closet of jumbled clothes. If it's not organized, you won't wear half of it and you will only complain that you don't have clothes to wear, right? Similarly, our ideas and aspirations can get lost in our mind if we don't process them and give them a shape. And this is actually backed by neuroscience research. Our brains can't really tell the difference between real experiences and those vividly imagined. And so visualizing your intentions, goals, and aspirations trains your brain to accept your new reality. It rewires your mind to believe what you want is truly possible. But before we dive in, it's important to note that there's some prep work to do before creating your vision board. And this involves defining, number one, your core values. Your core values are what will define everything that will go on your vision board. We know how values are so important as they dictate many of the decisions we make in our everyday life, but it's equally important that you apply these values to your business life. And that's because your core values act as a magnet, attracting the audience that shares that same set of values as you. Your core values are also what shapes how you build your offers and sets the tone for your brand's overall vibe. And when you're true to your values, it really shines through and it shows up in your energy. And trust me, people can tell that, and that's really what creates deeper connections with your audience. Next, your intentions. Your intentions set the big picture, the direction you want to move toward. And finally, your goals. Your goals represent the specific and realistic actions you will need to take in order to be achieved. And by realistic, I mean you can't just put earning $1 million on your vision board if you've never even started a business before. You should set challenging but realistic goals so that they don't feel overwhelming, but you can achieve them. I personally create a new vision board each year and then keep on top of my goals following the 12-week year method. And let me know in the comments if you've ever tried it or if you're interested in learning more about that. So a vision board isn't about collecting pretty images or fluffy desires. It's really about intentionally visualizing and truly feeling what you want your life to look like, with each image serving a specific purpose. And then each image, each element should connect to an action plan that helps bring that vision to life. Because you see, manifesting only works when your intentions are backed by specific actions. It's like the universal balance of yin and yang. Feminine and masculine energies must complement each other or everything falls out of alignment. So let me show you my vision board. So welcome to my vision board. Each of these images you'll see is directly tied to the values, intentions, and goals I set for myself. And you might also notice that the board is very curated, from the shapes, the fonts, the colors, and even the lighting. And this is intentional because I wanted to make sure to convey the mood and the emotions that I want someone to feel whenever they visit my YouTube channel and my business. You'll also notice a mix of personal and business goals, because our core values are the same across both areas, so it wouldn't make sense to keep them separate. And instead, having them all together is a nice way to clearly see how your values play out in these different areas of your life and how these areas are actually very connected. So let me give you an example. Self-care is one of my core values. And in my personal business, that means prioritizing activities like exercising, hairstyling, journaling. And in my business, this translates into a cozy business approach, focusing on content creation for YouTube and email rather than the fast-paced platforms like Instagram or TikTok. Okay, so now let me tell you exactly what's on my vision board and what actually has become a reality this year once I stepped into my new identity and applied consistent action. So first of all, I started running and going to the gym. I lost 3 kilos and started enjoying exercising pretty much for the first time in my life. I also started my new YouTube channel and published my first 10 videos, number 10 being this one I'm recording right now. I refurbished my studio and it's crazy how similar it's turned out to what's on the vision board. Then I prioritized sleep, rest, and self-care, and I really leaned into my feminine energy, paying more attention to little details like wearing jewelry, preferring high quality fabrics in my clothing, and things like that. I dedicated time to learn more about manifestation and visualization techniques. I found my zone of genius and spent more time writing and developing my own ideas. And then we are expanding our family as we're expecting baby number 2 in 2025. Very casual pregnancy announcement in there. And finally, and this is something that is still work in progress, I'm creating my first digital product, which actually takes me to the last step in this process. Earlier, I mentioned that there's a way to figure out if your vision is worth pursuing. How do you know if people would actually pay attention and money for what you want to offer? You will do this by building a narrative. Because you can have all the goals, strategy, and intentions in the world, but if you don't build narrative around them, it's like rowing upstream. So what's a narrative? A narrative is a sequence of events. It's the plot, the characters, the setting, the conflict, the resolution, all elements you need to share with your audience to involve them. And to bring that narrative to life, you will of course use storytelling. So how do we do this in practice? In order to really discover what exactly your audience needs help with and from which angle you can serve them best, you need to invite them to come on a journey with you so they can go from being just spectators to actual characters in your story. And you'll do this by sharing events that are happening in the present moment, as well as your vision for the future. And to use a marketing term, you'll do this by building in public. So I first learned about this powerful concept of building in public from Kevon Cheung, who is another entrepreneur I really admire for his empathy and transparency. He describes building in public as an omakase, a Japanese dining experience where the chef decides and prepares the entire menu right there in front of you, and at the same time, he involves you. He chats with you. He might even ask you to help him put the finishing touches on some of the dishes. And most importantly, he gets direct and indirect feedback from you about the food. So imagine that the chef is you, and the sushi are the products or services you want to build, and the guests are people from your audience. You're not just hiding in the kitchen and preparing everything, then serving it, only to find out that that's not what your customers wanted and that no one will actually eat it. You're cooking with your audience so that when the food is ready, they'll not only be hungry, but also incredibly excited to eat, or in our case, buy from you or work with you. And if it appears that they want, it doesn't mean that you need to ditch everything and just be miserable doing something you don't love. It may just mean you need to reframe your vision and find a different angle that meets the people that you want to serve exactly where they need you the most. And it's very important that you start with this process right at the beginning of your journey so that you start thinking about how you'd prefer to monetize and see if that matches with what your audience would prefer the most. So are you going to create a digital product or a course? Or do you have enough time to be more hands-on and offer private consultations or group coaching? Does your audience have the time, money, and the right mindset to invest in high-level coaching? Or do they prefer lower ticket offers and learning at their own pace? These are all things you must keep in mind as they dramatically change the way you create content and the type of clients you want to attract. And at the end of the day, with all the self-development talk in this video, there was a lot of you talk, but you know what? That's really not the point. The whole point to finding yourself is so that you can be found by others who need you the most. But in order to do that, you must allow yourself to be yourself. And you know what? It's okay to feel uncomfortable and even scared. I definitely feel that way many times because it's so much easier to hide behind the same strategies, steps, and frameworks everyone shares. But I really think that the future belongs to those who show up as themselves before showing up as a perfectly constructed personal brand. The future belongs to those who have the courage to unbrand themselves. And by the way, I'll be sharing more behind the scenes and building public content in my coming videos. So subscribe if you'd like to see it in action and help shape it. Please remember, change doesn't happen overnight. You need to allow yourself to embody your vision in baby steps. And also try not to get distracted by looking at the success of others, and remember that behind every success, there's always a lot of work, perseverance, and previous experience we sometimes may not even notice. And so if there's something I really want you to take away from this video, is this. The most important thing you can do on this journey is to stay true to yourself. Remain focused on your vision and start now so that you can be found by those who need you the most. And when you do that, I can guarantee one thing: your success will be inevitable.